Enter the Labyrinth. Neon, also in solo mode, replied, suggesting that due to the lack of response from others who had entered, it was probably best not to. Kang Dingjun, in normal mode, asked if anyone wanted to clear the first floor with him, and if they knew what the first monster was. War players chimed in with questions and answers. As he had predicted, most of the messages were from solo players. People in other modes could meet and talk to each other, but solo players could only communicate through the community. He was pleasantly surprised to see a message from Li Qian, a solo player, asking for advice, the sight of the ever-confident strongest player Li Qian appearing confused that the stardom used him. However, he wondered if it might be a facade as he recalled the status window he had seen back then. Perhaps Qian had been a scared cat hiding her true self. Until the end, he revisited the messages, knowing that it had only been a day since the Labyrinth had opened. Solo players would start entering once a month had passed, so there should be plenty alive right now. Then he started to type. The rewards in solo mode were undoubtedly commensurate with the difficulty, although she had missed out on many rewards after swiftly defeating the boss. Li Qian had managed to become the strongest player. Qian and the other players received a message and were surprised to see Kang TaeSan, a solo mode player, sharing the basic method for clearing the first floor in solo mode. He stretched, curious about what would happen next, as he had anticipated trusting an article without any basis and entering the Labyrinth could be challenging. Even if they believed him, he didn't know how they would react. He recalled that among the 10,000 people who entered solo mode, the only one to survive was Li Tian. Planning his next move, he pulled out some large rat meat, considering whether to eat it. Considering his goal, it might be for the best. He bit into the raw, uncooked meat. The system ran a status condition check and notified him that the check had failed. He had food poisoning. Food poisoning could rapidly deplete his health for 2 days unless he continued to consume cure potions or health potions. He would die. He drank from the spring of life, aware that food poisoning was a nightmare for beginners. That's why people who had suffered through it once advised everyone to cook before eating. After consuming the water, he was back in prime condition. However, he knew that obtaining food in the Labyrinth was challenging. Emergency rations were available at the shop, but they were costly, limited, and would eventually run out, forcing players to resort to eating Labyrinth creatures. Biting into the raw meat again, he was once again poisoned. He drank the water and recovered once more. He realized that sometimes, due to restricted space, they had no choice but to eat raw meat if they got food poisoning. In such situations, it was the worst. He noticed that he was starting to feel full. The system showed that he had suffered through so many diseases that he had formed resistance, earning him the continuous condition activation skill. He had expected disease resistance because everything changes if he had the disease resistance skill. He raised his proficiency, realizing that even if it was used solely as a skill to become immune to food poisoning, it was useful, although it was a skill that could only be obtained after contracting various diseases. He wondered if he should obtain the next skill. Despite his dislike, he walked into the center of the water. He submerged his head underwater. The system informed him that he was currently unable to breathe. He was in pain, but knew that he needed to endure it. He had heard someone say that drowning was one of the most painful ways to die. The water on the surface bubbled from his breath. When he was on the brink of death, he immediately emerged from the water. As a result, he earned the conditional activation skill Unbreath. The system also informed him that he had felt the touch of death, leading him to earn the conditional activation skill Line of Death, catching his breath, hoping that it would work. Conditional activation skill Unbreath had a mana usage of 1, proficiency of 1, and allowed him to hold his breath for an extended period. Currently, that period was about twice his normal time. He knew that it was a skill that extended how long he could hold his breath, which would be highly beneficial in areas where the air itself was poisonous, as it required being underwater right at the brink of death. Not many people had it, but obtaining it also rewarded the line of death skill. He thought it wasn't too bad, but he was puzzled as to why his proficiency and it was already at 54%. If his proficiency was at 54%, then he would be the same as his future self. He wondered if he could inherit something like that, maybe because it was a skill tied not to his body but to his mind. Still, if that was the case, his calm mind and detection wouldn't be at 1%. He pondered for a moment, but couldn't find an answer. He acknowledged that unexplainable events frequently happened inside the labyrinth, and he couldn't afford to scrutinize each one of them. He grasped his sword and stated that there were more skills he could acquire, so he couldn't stop now. Kang Junhook, a solo mode player, asked him if it was actually the correct method. While surprised and wondering if TaeSan was insane, TaeSan replied that high risk, high return, and asked him if he hadn't heard of it before, explaining that if the difference is too great he can't gain them, so he thought it was the best time. Junhook replied that it was not the issue right now, and he apologized to TaeSan because he just couldn't do it, but TaeSan told him to do as he wished and that he was not the one losing out. Junhook was frustrated because he thought even if that was the case, he wondered how he was supposed to do it. Back to TaeSan concentrating and activated the unbreath. He knew that combinations were a big part of skills, and for example, if certain skills and situations coincided, a new skill could be gained. He swung his sword and attacked the wall of the spring life continuously. He knew that being able to endure for twice as long while in the unbreathing state is obviously limited to when they are completely still. He swung his sword at the wall multiple times while not breathing. A moment later, he finally breathed and wiped his sweat with his worn leather armor. The system told him that he had attacked many times while in an unbreathing state, and because of it, he had earned the special active skill unbreathing attack. Also, it told him that he had earned more than 10 skills and was in a state where he could boldly say he had earned skills, so he earned the title of skill player. He looked at his sword and said that it was not bad, like how he could read the movement of the big rat. He could also see the set tempo of humans before they move. He knew that an unbreathing attack is a skill that will let him freely change that tempo, and he thought it was a great skill he used well while getting through the labyrinth. Then he opened his status window and saw that he was currently level 3. Health was 120, mana was 12, strength was 10, intelligence was 12, agility was 21, attack was +1, and defense was +7. He wondered if Li Qian said that when she passed the first floor her agility was 13, but right now he was at 21, so he knew that he was definitely much faster. Then he walked out of the spring life, planning that he could slowly start creating his main skills. Main skills were usually worth more than 10 basic skills, or were able to overcome a large difference in stats, for example addition or multiplication skills, or absolute judgment, which could discern hidden elements, attack nullification, which eliminated the result of an attack, or time stop, which stopped the time within the vicinity. They were all main skills, and having just one would give him an overwhelming advantage over players of the same level. He grabbed his shield, guessing that maybe because of it, the method to earn them was peculiar. For example, complete surveillance could barely be obtained only after evolving the detection skill 2 or 3 times, but he wondered what if there were a main skill that could be gained on the first floor, and if it would become even more difficult to earn later. Then Big Rat appeared, and it jumped toward him to bite him, but he was standing still, thinking that obviously he must obtain all of those skills. It bit his leg, and he received damage 4 and 3, but he didn't move. It squeaked happily while continuously damaging him by 4, 3, 4, 4, and more. He knew that it was biting him with vigor. Thinking that he couldn't respond to its attack, he looked down and saw the big rat happily biting him. The system warned him that he was on the brink of death, but he thought he needed to wait a little bit more, and when the system warned him that he was in danger of dying, he immediately attacked it with his shield. The system showed him that his line of death skill proficiency rose by 3%, and his combined proficiency rose by 2%. He blocked his leg Making the big rat confused and angry, it ran fast toward his other leg and tries to attack him, but he blocked its attack. Using his shield, the system told him that he completely blocked the opponent's attack, and he earned the special active skill block. He thought it was a good skill that nullified attacks dealing less than a certain amount of damage, but it wasn't the skill he was hoping for. The big rat once again attacked him. Fortunately, he blocked it with his shield. Even though he was in danger of dying, he wanted to gain the skill Endure because it nullified damage that would result in death just once, and all damage taken afterward for a set period of time. He knew that nobody had obtained that skill before besides him. He remembered GM was amazed and asked how in the world did he learn Endure. Also Tion was curious too and asked why he was the only one to get such cheat skills. The ways of learning skills within the labyrinth were simple and already set. They could receive the skill from someone else, or if they achieved something others could not, they were awarded a matching skill, and finally they could try to reproduce a similar effect to the skill. He obtained an unbreath by holding his breath, and because he swung his blade while in that state, he earned an unbreathing attack, so he wished to earn Endure, which nullifies an attack that would lead to death. The big rat was near to biting him, but he just focused on looking at it and smiling because he knew that he just needed to continuously block the attack that would have led to his death. Then he blocked the big rat that could have led to his death, so he had earned the continuous conditional activation skill Endure. He smiled when he got what he wanted and stabbed the big rat using his shield. He proudly raised his hand while saying that it was a skill that could save their life and asked if it wouldn't be a waste not to go for it just because they are scared back. Then GM and Tio were stunned, but they smiled because they expected TaeSan to be a crazy bastard. At one point, he knew that the people who heard it would respond in that way, but it was the labyrinth, and if they didn't risk their life, they wouldn't gain anything. He exhaustedly walked toward the water of spring life and drank it as just like before he was recovered to his best condition. He opened his status and was grateful because he also raised his proficiency in the line of death and calm mind a lot. So he wondered if there was another skill he should learn. He felt like there should be a couple, but he had over 200 skills. Suddenly he heard a rustling sound and an old man shouted that there was a prior visitor. The system told him that he had encountered a person searching for God. He cast his shield, making the man tell him that it was a great response. He knew that monsters cannot enter the spring of life, which meant the man was an NPC. Also he heard that most of the solo mode NPCs are psychopaths. The man asked him if he was an adventurer, making him ask what an adventurer is. The man explained that they referred to those who toil to conquer the labyrinth as such, and asked him if he was one, to which he replied yes. Then he remembered Chom telling him before that when she was resting at the spring of life on the first floor, some night grandpa appeared, and he was someone who served some god or something. He panicked, wondering what came next again because he needed to remember it quickly, but the old man suddenly launched to punch him and told him to try and block it. He was stunned when the system warned him that the old man named Angel activated a non-lethal attack. When he thought he was going to die, his line of death activated. He advanced his shield and blocked Einzel's attack, which made a large impact on their surroundings. He was surprised that it was such a heavy blow. He tried to compose himself, making Angel smile in amazement. He struggled hard to block the attack, but eventually he pulled his shield back because he couldn't handle the force. The system informed him that he had closed in on incredible power, thus his strength permanently increased by 1, and he had deflected incredible power. Furthermore, he obtained the conditional activation skill Deflect. Angel launched another punch at him. TaeSan thinks he can't dodge it and should forget the technique because the difference in their strength was too vast. The punch hit him hard, throwing him back, but when Angel looked at him, he laughed, surprised because he thought he had dealt at least 100,000 damage, but it only inflicted 211 damage on TaeSan. TaeSan activated his non-lethal attack which nullified the damage inflicted by Igel. He was surprised that Igel destroyed the labyrinth wall with one strike, and it made him think that the gatekeeper was strong too, concluding that solo mode was populated with nothing but monsters. Angel walked closer to him, expressing his surprise. Then Angel explained when he punched his shield, commending him for managing to block that attack with his skill in that split second. However, he immediately let it go to mitigate the damage. TaeSan replied that he couldn't just stand there and take it. Angel laughed at his response and agreed with him. Angel extended his hand, clarifying that he hadn't planned on killing him from the start. That's what the non-lethal attack was for. Moreover, even if he had attacked him lethally, TaeSan had endured, so he didn't think it would have been a problem. TaeSan accepted Einzel's hand, questioning if he had seen it. Einzel responded that he was impressed with TaeSan's tenacity to fight while on the brink of death, and that his skills were outstanding. He couldn't believe that TaeSan had deflected his attack with such low stats. TaeSan knew that those NPCs were supposed to have their own consciousness, but he was confused that Einzel knew about skills when not even Li Xian did. Einzel told him that he was worried TaeSan would be weak, but he was relieved to see that those fears were unfounded. He passed with full marks. Angel then asked him for his name. TaeSan replied that his name was Kang TaeSan. Angel told him that their meeting was a joyous encounter and a blessed miracle. He introduced himself as the one who seeks a god and asked to be referred to as Igel. TaeSan remembered Tian telling him that when she was in the spring of life she was exhausted due to the persistent rats. Just when she thought she was safe, having reached the spring of life, someone appeared behind her. She heard a rustle sound from behind and turned around in confusion. Suddenly she was met with a strong fist aiming at her. She was stunned at the sight of the fist, so Angel retracted his fist, calling her a feeble coward. TaeSan remembered that Tian said the knight looked at her with contempt and then left. After that incident she never saw Angel again, but currently he was shaking Einzel's hand, which felt delightful. TaeSan asked Einzel if he could question him. When Angel agreed, he asked why Angel attacked people so suddenly and whether he did it to harass the weak. Einzel replied that it wasn't his intention and reminded him that he was a paladin, so why would he oppress the weak? Angel explained that he simply did it to evaluate those who visit that place. This made TaeSan question what he meant by evaluating. Einzel replied that he wanted to see if they have what it takes to survive there and whether they were worth his acknowledgement. Angel also told him that there was nothing more annoying than a person with no understanding of themselves. However, in that sense Einzel reassured him that he had passed incredibly. TaeSan thought Einzel's explanation clarified things. Angel evaluated people based on their sense of worth, so at least Angel would have no reason to be his enemy. TaeSan asked Steingel to confirm if his name was Igel. He replied yes, and explained to TaeSan that his glorious father had given him the name. TaeSan then asked Einzel to confirm if he was seeking a god, and if he could ask which one he was seeking. TaeSan knew that there were many gods in the labyrinth. As varied as they were, they tested players and provided rewards, but most players didn't care much about them because they only existed in solo mode, thanks to Li Xian frequently telling him about how awful and disgusting the gods were. He had learned a lot about them. Einzel replied that the more people knew about her, the better. He revealed that the god he served was the loving goddess Levi. Enough. Angel explained that they all worshipped her, shouting her name from dawn to dusk. Levi enough was a wonderful goddess who connected with those who loved her, and there was no goddess in their world more beloved than her. Unfortunately, his world had been destroyed, so he was the only one who remembered her. TaeSan asked Angel if he entered the labyrinth to find his goddess. Einzel confirmed it, but added that he hadn't seen even a glimpse of her. TaeSan knew Levine off the goddess, and thanks to Tian he knew which floor she was on. However, the problem was that Tian had told him that the goddess had already been cruelly torn to shreds by the time Tian found her. Tian urgently sent him a message, and he was surprised to read that Tian was confused about why she was there and felt like she was going to throw up. He wondered if he should tell Angel the truth considering how disgusting the scene was given that even Cheon, who had faced and overcome countless hardships, found it repulsive. Angel asked him if he could ask a question, to which TaeSan asked what it was. Angel asked if TaeSan was in any hurry to escape the labyrinth, and TaeSan replied that he wasn't, because his goal wasn't to clear the labyrinth, but to become stronger by exploring it and obtaining all the rewards. Angel Clapton asked if TaeSan had any thoughts about learning Levinoff's skills from him. He readily agreed, surprising Angel, who thought TaeSan would at least contemplate it, but he calmly informed Angel that he had no reason to refuse. TaeSan was aware that an NPC within the labyrinth was so strong that he couldn't even begin to imagine his source of power, therefore why he shouldn't accept Angel's offer to teach him skills. TaeSan then asked Angel what he wanted in return. Angel replied nothing, and considered it an apology. For this reason Angel apologized for attacking TaeSan suddenly, and even if it was for a test, for acting violently upon someone he had never met before. Moreover, Angel mentioned that as a paladin it was an act for which he had to repent. TaeSan smiled and suggested to Angel that it would have been better if he hadn't attacked him in the first place. However, Angel replied that it was a different story, and that he was offering the apology because TaeSan was someone worth apologizing to. If he wasn't, Angel would have simply spat at him and left. This made TaeSan think that Angel was a bit odd. Angel gently took hold of TaeSan while explaining that an apology with only words was worthless, and as an adventurer he believed that TaeSan would want to obtain precious skills, therefore he chose to do so, and asked if it was all right with TaeSan, who replied that it was more than all right. TaeSan thought that earning a skill from a non-lethal attack, that they didn't need to delay any further, and that they should begin. Angel instructed TaeSan to try and hit him with his shield, which was deemed feeble. Angel explained to him that there were innumerable skills in the labyrinth. Among them, those that could be earned simply with a single action were basic skills. If he wielded a sword, he would attain swordsmanship. If he wielded a shield, it would be shield arts, and if he wielded a spear, it would be spearmanship. The moment he wielded a weapon, he would receive the respective skill immediately. As the skill proficiency increased, his knowledge and acumen with the relevant weapon also improved. Therefore it could be said that essentially all players had such skills. So a skill that combined all of these basic skills while not flashy was one he could boldly claim to be the most useful. It was called the Eric Weapon Arts. Even Levy enough, the goddess, had personally complimented him on it. This was the very skill he wished to teach him. Exhausted, he acknowledged the explanation, prompting a smile from Angel. Angel asked if he considered it pointless. He explained to Angel that just because the skills were combined, it didn't mean anything fundamentally changed. He thought that it might be different if it involved the main skills, but skills involving weapons would be pointless no matter how many he combined due to fundamental issues in the system. Angel asked him about his current added attack value, to which he replied that it was 1. Angel remarked that it was an adorable number, and the total damage should amount to about 4. He agreed, since there was a base attack value. Angel activated his target lock, meaning he would receive all attacks with fixed damage. He clarified that it should be the shield's base attack, and ordered him to make an attack as previously instructed. He grabbed his shield and thrust it at Angel, causing Angel to take 4 points of damage. Angel scratched his head, asking him if he really had to strike at his head, to which he calmly apologized. Angel tried to smile through his annoyance, telling him that this time he should attack him with his fists. TaeSan knew that Angel would be upset if he targeted the head again. He agreed and launched his fist towards Angel. He punched him in the chest, inflicting 2 points of damage. John Angel, he asked him if he noticed what he was trying to illustrate, to which he asked to find all men to demonstrate how the damage varied depending on the weapon used to strike. Angel confirmed his understanding, commending him for catching on quickly. He explained that because of this factor, adventurers used a single weapon. For example, if he equipped both a +50 gauntlet and a +20 sword, when attacking with the sword, only the 20 attack would be utilized, and when striking with the gauntlet, only the 50 attack would be used, a combined damage of 70 would never occur. TaeSan asked Angel if it wasn't obvious and explained that if equipping two weapons combined their attack values, all players would equip themselves with a multitude of weapons. This was why they only used one main weapon and focused on raising proficiency, and that alone. Angel was satisfied with his explanation, but asked him if it didn't seem uncomfortable and inefficient to be able to use only a single type of weapon during combat. Angel explained to him that battling was something he did while risking his life, so obviously he would use his entire body during the process. Not just his weapon, he might strike with his arms or tackle, using his shoulders. TaeSan told Angel that during those moments, due to the system's mechanics, only the weakest damage value counted. He asked if there was no way around it. Angel confirmed that it was accurate, however his religious order serving the goddess Labyrinth disagreed. Angel believed that his body was a weapon and his weapon was a part of his body. When wielding his body there should be no distinction. Therefore, after extensive research, he was able to develop the Iraq weapon arts in the Labyrinth. Its effects were a complete combination of all the basic skills and damage based on the total attack value of all outfitted equipment. TaeSan was surprised to hear this and asked Steinsel for confirmation to ascertain if he had truly mentioned a total attack. Steinsel noticed with pleasure that he seemed to have understood the concept properly. He explained that if he had a plus 20 sword and plus 50 gauntlets, no matter what he used to strike it would utilize 70 as its attack ties, and asked Angel in surprise if this could mean that the range of use was broadened. Angel confirmed his assumption, explaining that it affected not only in his weapons but every part of his body. Even if he slapped with his hands, tackled using his shoulders, or kicked with his feet, they would all use 70 as the attack value. TaeSan smiled, realizing that this essentially meant his entire body was a weapon. With the Iraq weapon arts, he could equip all of the equipment that had been previously dismissed as useless. He knew that currently it might not hold much value, but as he progressed through the Labyrinth and earned higher ranking equipment, that skill would hold the value of a main skill. He told Angel that it was an amazing skill and smiled, expressing his desire to acquire the Eric's skill. Heinzel told him that this might not be shocking to him who had already endured so much, but for ordinary adventurers it was a skill that they couldn't achieve even with a lifetime of effort. He then asked TaeSan if he wanted to learn it, to which TaeSan nodded and replied affirmatively, surprising Angel with his unhesitating response. Angel placed his hand on his shoulder, instructing him to relax his entire body. He explained that this skill was different from others because it was one he had personally created and learned through his own experience, therefore he could transfer referred to him quite easily. Moreover, his proficiency was 100%, so TaeSan could acquire it without enduring any pain. The system notified him that the basic skills, shield arts, and swordsmanship had been combined with Iraq weapon arts. He was amazed to feel an influx of diverse skills and information, and couldn't believe that he could acquire a skill so easily. A minute later, the system informed him that he had received a skill from the creator of the Iraq weapon arts. He received an ultimate rank skill, Eric weapon arts. Iraq weapon arts proficiency was at 1%. It was an art that used his weapons and body, but since he was still not proficient, there would be losses in applying power. Einsel searched for something while advising him to train regularly without skipping a day until he became proficient with it. Then Einsel handed him a faded ring with an attack value of +1. It was a ring that had been used for a long time, and it seemed to have had great value. Initially, Angel apologized for its diminished power, but he wore it, assuring Angel that it was enough. He knew that in the past he might have discarded it as something useless, but now that ring held the same value as the rusty sword. Angel told him that he had given him everything he wanted to, but felt a bit of regret because he couldn't go into great detail at that moment. Angel then eagerly suggested that they spar, asking if he should give his newly learned skill a test run before trying it out for real. He summoned his shield and a short Einzel that he had no reason to refuse. They faced each other in silence for a moment before Eindel swiftly charged at him to attack. However, unlike before, he faced Eindel with a confident smile on his face. He knew that in the labyrinth their evaluation was based on all of the actions they took, no matter how insignificant the room was. If they thoroughly searched and found something, their detection proficiency would increase. Moreover, if they continuously block their opponent's attacks, the proficiency of their shield arts would rise. Thus, a fight with someone strong held significance. Later, he was down on the ground, exhausted. He wondered if they had sparred for 2 whole days. He opened his newly obtained skill, battle persistence, with a proficiency of 3%. This skill allowed him to maintain combat for a long duration, and without getting overly fatigued. He was thankful for this skill, because it would enable him to battle S-rank monsters for several days straight. He knew that he could only receive it while fighting other players, so he had given up on acquiring. And in solo mode, suddenly Angel mentioned that he couldn't believe he had obtained a skill and sense that wasn't typical for an adventurer on only the first floor, as he had initially thought Angel was indeed adept at discerning people's abilities. Heinzel then asked TaeSan how it was, and if it was enough. He sat up and replied that it was. Angel expressed satisfaction and pleaded with him to promise 2 things. Angel told him that since he had also learned the Iraq weapon arts, he could teach it to someone else. However, if that someone was a worthless, pathetic person, he absolutely must not teach them. If he broke that rule, Angel would personally kill him. He calmly acknowledged and agreed to this condition. Angel then asked him for the second promise. If he discovered any information about Lady Labyrinth, he should inform Angel. However, he told Angel that the chances of meeting him again in the labyrinth were very low. Angel agreed, stating that he didn't hold high expectation stations. He just hoped for a miracle. TaeSan pondered whether he should inform Angel. He thought that if Angel found the goddess, either Labyrinth wouldn't have died, or both Angel and Labyrinth would perish there. Hence, unless a significant variable occurred before Angel found her, Labyrinth would inevitably be killed by someone. This posed a dilemma for him. He asked Angel if he wanted to know the location of the goddess he loved. Angel softly replied that finding her was his final wish. Then he told Angel that he knew where Lady Labyrinth, the goddess, was. Upon hearing this, Angel was stunned and shocked. Angel stood up and asked him what he had said. He replied that he knew where the goddess Labyrinth was, but Angel angrily told him that he was taking his joke too far. Angel explained to him that he had roamed the entire labyrinth for a long time, but he had never been able to find even a hint of his goddess. So he asked TaeSan how he, who had just entered the first floor, could know where Labyrinth was. TaeSan realized that Angel didn't believe him, but he knew that it was a natural reaction. Still, he had thought of a response to it as well. He told Angel that he could trust him and explained that his world had an item related to the labyrinth. Unfortunately, Angel told him that it was a lie because the labyrinth didn't have any maps related to itself, but TaeSan explained to Angel that it was not a map related to the entire labyrinth, but a map connected to a special existence. Angel was surprised to hear this because he knew it was true, and he asked TaeSan if the god-calling flute was in his world. He replied yes, and explained that there was an item they could obtain within the labyrinth that told them the location of a god. His family had information on it, and he had already memorized the locations of all the gods written in there. He remembered TaeSan put something on the table and told him to look at it because she couldn't just not tell anyone about it. She explained that it was an item she had barely gotten on floor 89, but there was no point in using it as the gods were all so horrible. Just laughing at her, this made him ask her if she was complaining again. He thought it was just useless information back then, but he didn't expect to use it in a situation like that. Then he told Angel that on floor 78 at the Library of All in the 24th secret room, the goddess Labyrinth was there. Angel was surprised and tearfully realized that he hadn't been able to check the library at all. He told Angel that with this information he thinks he has repaid him, but Angel grabbed his shoulder and happily told him that he had repaid him more than enough. He looked at his shoulder and saw that Angel was firmly grabbing him while expressing his gratitude and stating that he had never been more thankful to someone else in his life. Angel also told him that he was indebted to him. He told Einsel that he was hurting his shoulder, and Eigel immediately jumped backward, apologizing because he couldn't hold back for a moment. He asked Einsel if he was thinking of going right away, and Einsel replied that it would be a little difficult as floor 78 was quite deep in a dangerous place even for him, so he would need to prepare thoroughly. Angel tearfully thanked him once again from the bottom of his heart and told him that it was hard to even convey it with words. Angel thought for a moment and told him that he wanted to repay him somehow. Then Einsel gave him a bronze ring and explained that it would be good for a skilled individual like himself. It was a bronze ring with health plus 20. It looked like a ring that would be handed to a priest of a religion that had currently gone extinct, and only one person had it. He wore it and was amazed because he would have needed to get to floor 30 on easy mode for an item like it. Angel explained to him that normally he wouldn't have given it to an adventurer on the first floor, but he felt like he was not a lazy man and he hoped that he wouldn't regret it. He told Einsel not to worry because he wouldn't have time to laze around. Angel was relieved to hear it and told him that he would go and prepare himself. This made him ask Angel if he was thinking of going down. Einsel replied that he had finally found a clue, so he couldn't bear to dawdle. He thanked him once again and told him that they should see each other again. Angel jumped happily while telling his goddess that he was coming. The last one to remember her was coming for her. Then Angel left the Spring of Life, happily leaving TaeSan alone. TaeSan wondered if Angel would be able to find the goddess, and if he did, would Levinov still be alive, or would the goddess have already died? But he thought in any case it would be a very long time before he met Angel again. Later, he stepped on a big rat while saying that after going around floor 1 for a while, his dexterity was currently 25, so catching a big rat was getting pretty easy for him. He activated his increased soul quality, but the system told him that the difference between his and his target's soul quality was too high, so he couldn't gain anything from the target. He realized that it didn't keep growing if the difference was too big, and he thought it was unfortunate, but he expected it. He walked away thinking that he had grown all he could on floor 1, so he should start heading to floor 2 soon, but before that he had somewhere he needed to go inside the labyrinth. There were secret rooms. Each floor had one hidden on it, and great rewards were given to those who found them. Magic staves, a ring of levitation, permanent stat increases, potions, and so on items that gave a huge advantage as they went through the labyrinth, but only one person could enter the secret room, so the competition was severe and easy mode. It relied more on luck and experience than skill. However, he was in solo mode, and in that place he would be able to obtain all the secret rooms. He opened the secret room door, wondering if the layout would be the same. He knew that the labyrinth map differed depending on the difficulty, but the general structure was the same, so all the secret rooms had a commonality. He went inside and was confident that it was there. There was only one entrance, and the inside was an empty room, a room with no purpose for existing, and so it got ignored by many players. That was why secret rooms existed in places like it. He searched the wall and tapped on it because he knew it was an ordinary brick without any special properties, so just going around tapping them would give him the highest chance of finding the room, meaning it was just going to take some time. When he saw the right spot, he pulled out the bricks, pressing, turning, and pulling them continuously. He thought it was fun compared to the room where he couldn't do anything but survive for a week. Also, because of his continuous pulling out of the bricks, his detection proficiency increased by 5%. Eventually, he discovered the secret room. The system told him that he was the first to discover the secret room, so he obtained the title of adventurer, and his intelligence had permanently increased. By 3, he saw the treasure chest of the secret room. At the end of the room, he looked around and thought that he could just run over and open it, but he knew that there was no way it would be that easy. He entered the room and saw a big rat sleeping, he stepped on it and grabbed it by the tail, then slammed it hard on the ground. He looked closer and saw that the big rat had pressed down some tiles. Then it got hit by an arrow. He realized that it was an arrow trap. And as he expected of floor one, it didn't look to be a difficult trap. He walked toward the press tile and pressed it down. An arrow attacked him from behind, but he caught it with his hand. He cast it aside, knowing that currently he was abnormally stronger than most players on floor 1, so he could do it if he concentrated enough. Then he jumps into the trap tiles and catches the arrows that attack him. He gets down while the arrow is flying from behind him, but avoids it. Realizing that it is getting more difficult, he steps onto the other trap, thinking that it would be a waste to buy arrows at the shop, so getting them there for free isn't nothing. While he is catching the arrows attacking him from the side, the arrows are poison arrows with an attack +2 and paralysis arrow attack +2. However, the arrows may fail to defend depending on their stats and level. He looks at the arrows and thinks that there are some weird ones. He looks back and puts the arrow in his inventory while planning to go again from the first trap. The arrows continuously attack him from different directions, but he just catches them easily, and he thinks it is technically an exploit, but it works pretty well. He put his arrows again in his inventory and sees in his inventory that he has stored 100 arrows, making him wonder if 100 should be enough, but he decides that he should get the main dish. He focuses on where the chest is and jumps toward it. He gets down thinking that if he was hoping just to break through, he can just block the arrows with the tower shield and run, but it is the labyrinth, and he knows that he needs to show a perfect process. The arrows flew towards him. He kicks to break 1 and 2 arrows. Then he catches the 3rd and 4th arrows, and finally he blocks the final arrow. He steps on the 9th brick and 9 more arrows are fired at him. He activates his unbreathing attack while running, which frees him from breathing for 10 seconds, and his clear view proficiency increases by 2%. He jumps to face the arrows, but sees that 3 arrows are coming from the front, 2 from the left, 3 from the right, and 1 from below. He knows that it will be difficult to dodge all of them, so he heightens his senses, and as a result, he obtains the continuous conditional activation skill improved sense. He breaks 1 of the arrows and breaks 3 more, leaving 5 arrows left. 1 of the arrows is in front of him, making him activate his deflect, but it turns around and hits him from his ass, damaging him by 8. Still, he breaks it, leaving 4 arrows left. He meets the 4 arrows, knowing that he can handle that much damage, and thanks to ignoring that arrow with skill, he has more freedom in his movement. When the arrows was about to hit him, he realized that the trajectory of the remaining arrows is the same. Then he catches 1 of the arrows on the pattern. Until then, the last trap shoot of 10 arrows, but he is surprised to see 15 arrows flying toward him, making him wonder if they are joking. He jumps back in panic and catches the arrows that were about to hitting him. He uses them to break the other arrows, realizing that there are more than he expected, and he can't block all of them, but he knows that as the number of arrows increases, more and more of them align on the same trajectory, so if he can't dodge them, he uses his arms to defend himself. Every arrow that hits him damages him until he is in a debilitated state. The system warns him that he is bleeding, and he will continue to lose health. He pulls out the arrows from his arm furiously because it hurts like hell. The system tells him that he has experienced excruciating pain, and he has obtained the continuous conditional activation skill reduce pain. He bandages his injured arm while looking at his health, which is 54 out of 140. His wounds hurt less thanks to the skill, but it still hurts because his proficiency is low. He thinks that if he hadn't experienced it multiple times in the past, he would have fallen unconscious. He walks toward the lever while thinking that since he got the skill that time by getting into a debilitated state and bleeding, he won't have to purposely get hit on the way back. He drags down the lever and the light appears on the ceiling of the room. He slowly opens the chest, guessing that the trap should all have been disabled. When he opens it completely, he sees a shining staff, and he is surprised that it is already a staff. He grabs it knowing that it should have been on at least floor 10 in hard mode, but it appears on floor 1 because it is the solo mode. This makes him wonder if it is a fake in the shape of the staff, but the system shows him that it is a staff of fire, a staff used by apprentice magicians that can use the basic magic fireball. This makes him realize that it is real. He looks at it, amazed while putting it in his inventory because he knows that it is the staff of fire, which is much more powerful than other types in the earlier levels. He wonders if it is like this in solo mode. He remembers that Cheon couldn't get through the secret room, so he has no point of reference, but he knows that if it is how it is going to be, he is going to be more successful in the future. Outside, he is met by an angry big rat, but he just kicks it because he can't even use one of his arms due to the huge stat difference. He has no problem dealing with a big rat. It growls at him furiously, but he just looks at it calmly. The system tells him that even while in a debilitated state, he has no problem moving about, so he has obtained the conditional activation skill on breaking. Well, then he steps on it, and the system tells him that he is victorious against a big rat. He goes inside the spring of life once again, drinks some water to recover to his peak condition, and he sits down to look at the skills he got. He sees the reduced pain skill with 1% proficiency that makes him become numb to pain. However, his senses do not dull. He also sees the improved sense skill with 1% proficiency that makes him improve his senses, and he could probably sometimes feel killing intent. He thinks those two are pretty decent skills, and although currently he doesn't have a use for them, as he increases his proficiency in them, they'll become exponentially better. Then he sees the unbreaking will skill with 1 mana usage and 1% proficiency. Even with all sorts of injuries, his fighting spirit can't be stopped, and while in combat, he can ignore all injuries for 10 seconds. He thinks that it hurt a bit getting it, but it was definitely worth it. Then he takes out the Staff of Fire with Fireball mana usage 3/1 proficiency, and it can produce a fireball that deals a lot of damage to a target with no resistance. Also, the target runs a check against the status condition burns. He puts it back in his inventory, thinking that he got everything he could on floor 1, so it is time for him to go down to floor 2. The structure of the labyrinth is simple. The stairs that lead down to the next floor are protected by a boss, and the player just needs to defeat that boss to continue forward. Later, he arrives at the boss's gate and thinks that it would be nice if defeating the boss was as simple as the labyrinth structure, but he also thinks that it wouldn't be a solo mode difficulty. If that were the case, he opens the gate and goes inside to meet the boss of the first floor. He greets the giant rat. Long time no see, and the boss named Giant Rat growls furiously. Upon seeing him, he realizes that something like this is the solo mode for one boss, but the giant rat was the easy mode's floor 10 boss. This makes him wonder how many players were ripped apart by the rat's claws. The huge rat runs toward him while he asks if he should even be surprised after all he has been through. Then he calmly tells it to come to him. TaeSan remembered that a giant rat wasn't a monster a mere first floor player could defeat. That's why Lee Chon, using an exploit, she leveraged the fact that the boss of the labyrinth couldn't leave its room. She filled the rat's room with oil and lit it on fire. It was a viable method given they had the time to spare. TaeSan thought that since Jian was the only player to survive solo mode, her strategy could be considered the correct answer. However, he knew this wasn't the fight. The labyrinth wanted the rat jump to attack him, but he calmly activated his fireball, understanding that only after demonstrating a near-perfect battle would he become significantly stronger. He launched his fireball, dealing 14 damage to the rat, running a burn check. The system confirmed that the giant rat was burning. He switches to his bow in an arrow, aware that the burn condition inflicted 1 damage every 10 seconds. However, this was insufficient. Positioning the arrow in his bow, he struck the giant rat, causing 7 damage points. When he ran a poison check, the system announced that the attempt failed. Nothing had happened to the giant Rat undeterred, he prepared another arrow, deciding it didn't matter if his first attempt failed, he would continue trying. Until he succeeded releasing the arrow, he hit the giant rat, paralyzing it. The creature couldn't move until 10 seconds had passed, or it was attacked. Approaching the giant rat, he examined the arrow, realizing the high value of these status-altering arrows. Glancing at the immobile rat, he declared they should begin the grind. He shot another paralysis arrow at the boss to immobilize it, then fired another status arrow to continue stacking damage. As the giant rat lay on the ground, TaeSan advanced shield at the front for protection. He swung his shield in an attack that felt more than overwhelming. It was closer to a stump. He struck it with his shield, dealing 13 damage points. Incapacitating it, the rat was now susceptible to additional damage. TaeSan leapt back as the giant rat growled uncontrollably. He understood there was a limit to his method, and its health should start dropping soon. He wondered if it was time. He recalled that when the giant rat's health fell below 20, it went into berserk mode. He and the other players were shocked when they saw it devour one of their comrades. The system showed that the giant rat was enraged and had entered a berserk state. He realized that Phase 2 had begun, and it was now a duel. It attacked him immediately, but luckily he blocked it with his shield just in time. Still, he took 8 damage points more than he had anticipated with his current strength. As the giant rat growled loudly, he planned to use his current highest stats dexterity to gnaw away at its health. It lunged at him with its claws, but he pinned them to the ground using his shield, holding it momentarily. When it tried to free its claws, he moved behind it and attacked from the rear. Dealing 7 damage points, the creature screamed in pain and retaliated with its sharp claws. Fortunately, he blocked it with his shield, but still suffered 5 damage points in response. He pushed back hard with his shield, causing an additional 7 points of damage. The system notified him that his battle persistence proficiency had increased by 1% when the giant rat tried to bite him. He once again blocked it. However, he was running out of breath and knew his body wouldn't hold if the battle continued in the same way, so he unsheathed his sword and attacked it. While returning his shield to the inventory, he activated his unbreathing attack and sliced at the giant rat, continuously causing 8 and then 7 damage points. Unfortunately, he didn't dodge its sharp claws and suffered 24 damage points. He realized that if it attacked with 24 damage points, he could only endure a few more hits. Charging forward to get closer, he took an additional 25 damage points. He estimated that if he used both endure and deflect about 8 more times, he would defeat the rat before collapsing himself. He activated his deflect and slashed the giant rat with his sword, then advanced to meet it in face to face. It scratched him with its claws, but his counterattack succeeded, ensuring it would take significant damage. From his next move, he aimed his sword at it and stabbed it in the chest, then slashed its neck, causing 20 damage points. The giant rat screamed in pain and slowly fell to the ground dead. The system announced that he was victorious against the giant rat. He wiped off his sweat and remarked that it was easier than he had thought. The system notification appeared before him, informing him that his dexterity had permanently increased by 5, his mana permanently increased by 3, his strength permanently increased by 2. And he had activated the increased soul quality effect. In addition, he had leveled up and returned to peak condition. While he had anticipated this, he still found it satisfying. The reward system informed him that he had defeated the first floor boss, so he obtained the standard reward, 1 random stat increase potion. He had also achieved the hidden condition of the first floor, so he received the secret reward, 2 targeted stat increase potions. He picked them up, aware that these were difficult to acquire even after floor 50, then drank them while resting on the head of the dead giant rat. The system notified him that due to the effects of the random stat increase potion, his strength had permanently increased by 1. The targeted potions also permanently increased his strength by 2. He opened his status window to see his level had risen to 4 health to 155 mana to 15 Strength to 17 intelligence to 16 dexterity to 30 attack to +2 and defense to +7. Amazed at his high stats on just the first floor, he acknowledged he had done all sorts of things in easy mode to raise his stats. He also thought he had obtained another skill. Checking, he found he had acquired a counter skill with 5 mana usage and 1% proficiency. This skill countered an enemy's attack and dealt greater damage to the enemy. He was pleasantly surprised to have obtained it sooner than expected. Recognizing it as a skill as useful as deflect, he lay on the dead giant rat and stretched, believing he had checked everything he needed to. However, he suddenly wondered what had happened to it, because he remembered that he had written to the community that solo mode floor 1 was a basic clear method. Opening the system to check, he recalled that he had posted the article to the community. He didn't have any high expectations for it, but was puzzled by what he saw. The people were asking the other player if they could send him the path to the spring of life, but the others replied that they couldn't be helped because the location is different for everyone, therefore they needed to listen to the shopkeeper. Chan also assured everyone that they would be safe if they reached the spring. The others sarcastically joked about racing against death, which brought laughter to all. They felt grateful, considering themselves lucky to be alive. He was surprised to see that the community unity was entirely different from his previous life. At that time, no one discussed how to clear the floor, and words of despair filled the boards. Later, possibly due to despair, everyone fell silent except for Li Tian. He smiled when he read Qian's post. Seeking him, she haven't seen him since last posted. TaeSan felt the dynamic had shifted. Later, he glanced towards the stairway leading down to the second floor. He put on gloves and decided to proceed to the next level. The gloves, named Fighter's Glove, with an attack bonus of +1, protected his hands and could potentially deal some damage if he struck an enemy. The shopkeeper was surprised that he was buying the gloves and asked him if he intended to use his fists upon realizing that the peculiar old man had taught him the Iraq weapon arts. The shopkeeper inquired if he knew Angel. The man confirmed they were both rotting away there, so he knew Angel well. The shopkeeper asked him if he was only going to sell the meat, because if he had defeated the boss he should have also acquired leather and teeth, but he replied that he was not selling them because he had a different use for them. The man excitedly told him that he thought he understood what he meant and asked if he was planning to find the blacksmith of the Labyrinth. Harfin, he remembered Sean mentioning that without Harfin she wouldn't have been able to reach the deeper floors. If he journeyed deeper, he too would be able to meet Harfin, and so he decided to hurry. He knew that the place was slightly further from the Labyrinth's entrance. It was where things that had been stabbed to death could be revived, and the beings there weren't powerful. Eventually, he arrived at the second floor, and his mission was to defeat the boss of this floor and pass through. The reward was a low-grade mana increased potion in an undisclosed secret reward. He remembered the mana potion being a rare commodity, not even sold in the shop, hence he was eager to receive it. However, he was stunned when a flurry of unchecked messages appeared. Upon opening the community to check these messages, he was taken aback by the overwhelming number of thankful messages. Many expressed relief that he was alive and waited for him to answer their questions. As he pondered over which message to respond to first, a player named Kang Jun Hyuk requested a whisper. This gave him the perfect opening. He accepted it, and Jun Hulk was astonished. He couldn't even speak in the real world, but he simply asked Jun Hilk what he wanted. Jun Hope casually replied that it was nothing, he was just checking if his life savior was alive. He, in return, suggested Jun Hill quarry about himself first. TaeSan didn't expect those people pushed to their limits in that unfamiliar world to attempt the quest. After merely reading an article on the community, he then asked Jun Hilk, albeit it was not his place to question whether he had decided to rush in just after reading one article. Jun hooked tear. Flea replied that they had no choice and everyone was at their limit, thus he clung to any sliver of hope he could find. He still gets chills thinking about that time and thanked TaeSan for his help. Jun Hulk also explained that he knew they wouldn't get food unless they entered the labyrinth. There was no news from those who had ventured in, and his hunger grew. Moreover, there was no one to converse with, creating the perfect conditions for insanity. Jun Hook narrated how he had run into the labyrinth with a plan to grab anything edible in that desperate situation. Just in time, TaeSan shared his method to clear the first floor. Jun Hook expressed that though he might not have expected much, it was an article they desperately needed at the time. Hence, Miss Tyan succeeded first, followed by others. Upon hearing this, he realized that even Tian, who often complained about the community, was able to succeed. Consequently, others gained faith that they could do it as well. He asked Jun Hook how many people had succeeded in killing a big rat. Jun Hook replied that only 2 people had him, and Miss TaeSan figured Tian was a given, but this was his first time hearing about Jun Hook. He suspected Jun Hook might have died in the previous world while battling for his life. Since Jun Hook succeeded in hunting a big rat, his talent was probably similar to Tion's, an irregular who survived thanks to the article he wrote. He told Jun Hook that a peculiar old man NPC who is looking for his goddess will come to find him. This NPC will attack him mercilessly, but he should respond adequately because he'll receive something useful if he does. He explained that the NPC's treatment of him will change based on his actions. When he was about to ask Jun Hook to deliver a message to Tian upon her waking, Jun Hook asked if he was okay, which led him to question what Jun Hook meant. Jun Hook responded that he thought he was spoon-feeding them. Now he was grateful for his help, but technically, as they were all going through the same labyrinth, they were competitors, although currently weaker than him. If he continued to spoon-feed him, Jun Hill could catch up quickly. That, however, didn't mean he would do anything to him, and he didn't want to continue accepting without giving back. Flabbergasted, he asked Jun Hook what he meant, but Jun Hook insisted that he was being serious. TaeSan questioned Jun Hook about what competition he was talking about when they were all humans from the same dying Earth. He then explained to Jun Hook that there was only one reason he was sharing all this information: to prevent him from blindly running into a random ditch somewhere. He reminded Jun Hook that many had died despite reading his clear guide, and asked him what use knowing the method was when implementing it was an entirely different problem. TaeSan asked Jun Hook if he thought he could catch up just because he had told him something. Jun Hook shyly responded that he guessed he hadn't cleared the first floor yet, so he might have been too presumptuous. TaeSan left, telling Juno that it was good he understood, but he paused and wondered if it was about that time. He asked Jun Hook how the community was doing these days. Jun Hook replied that people from other modes were also engaging with them, but some were attempting to pick fights. He was ignoring them for now, but he didn't understand why they were behaving this way. Realizing that people who didn't know their place had started to stir, he told Jun Hook he understood and wished him good luck. He left, hearing Jun Hook cheerfully wishing him good luck too. He then proceeded to the second floor. On solo mode, he knew that until now the first floor had merely been a tutorial and the real labyrinth supposedly began. On the second floor, a group of goblins was in the room chatting among themselves. Suddenly, he kicked the door hard, startling the goblins. Bow-wielding, sword-wielding, and shield-wielding goblins charged at him. Still, he calmly grabbed an arrow from behind him and beckoned the goblins to come closer. Well guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, comment part 2 in the comments section. Also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and like the video. Thank you for watching, and see you next time again.